hidden treasures of the 119th Psalm. So we are going on a treasure hunt, and the gold we are seeking in this treasure hunt is actually the face of God, pure light. And how fun to actually mine this treasure with King David, a man who sought God with his whole heart. And his understanding of God's expression of the Hebrew language itself as he goes through the 119th Psalm, letter by letter, giving us 8 verses, which the Jews teach as 8 faces of each letter of expression. So join us taking this deep dive mining with King David in the 119th Psalm. Today we're going to dig in a hole that I might have told you years ago was kind of dry. This word, I just didn't used to like the word, I'm going to be honest. And the word is righteous. So we're working on the 119th Psalm. We're digging into the words that are repeated time and time and time again as we go through these Psalms to kind of get the roadmap as we begin to dig in deeply here. So, this particular word that we're talking about on this episode is tzaddik. It's righteous. And this word, maybe 2 years ago, I think I spent several months just working on this word because honestly, I didn't care for it. It sounded sort of religious to me. It had that kind of drapery. All this idea of being righteous, just maybe had to do with self-righteousness or something that was getting at me. So it used to be when I heard this word, it's kind of a turnoff to me. But as I studied the word tzaddik, all of a sudden I saw something that just absolutely was amazing. The first thing I would point out, for those that have not heard my show many times, is you'll hear me refer to Superman as a tzaddik. In other words, the Jews, there were 2 Jewish boys that developed Superman. And so when you see the big red S on Superman's chest, what you don't know is that when they developed Superman, that he was a tzaddik, which is really, really cool from my standpoint. And what that was on his chest was a big zaddy, the letter zaddy, which is the word, the letter that begins the word tzaddik, which means righteous. Okay? And so to begin the discussion on the word righteous, we have to look at this letter, tzaddik. And what's cool about it, in so many different levels, is that when you look at the word tree, I believe it's pronounced etz, or you'll find it all over the book of Genesis, that's the first place that you're going to find this letter, and it's because trees are at a right angle. In other words, they always grow towards the sun. And that's got everything to do with righteousness. And you might note throughout the Bible that wood and trees are very much connected to this concept. In other words, Noah's boat was the original ark, right? And it was built out of wood. Wood. Why? Because, again, trees are a picture of this righteousness. And the Ark of the Covenant, again, it was made out of wood. It came from a tree. Or even the sacrifices that they used to make atonement in the tabernacle and later on, that they used wood to burn those sacrifices on because, again, we're adding this idea of righteousness, a right angle to doing things right. Okay? And you might know, I shouldn't say it that way, you do know that Jesus was hung on a tree for a very specific reason in order to make us right? So when I began to see this, for whatever reason, it was springtime, and everywhere I looked at a tree, I thought, oh, that tree is headed towards the sun. It's at a right angle. That tree knows which way to point. That tree is doing things right. You couldn't do things much more right than a tree. It had everything to do with it. And the more I looked at trees, the more I got an idea of what righteousness was. And the Jews would tell you what's moral, what's the right thing to do. But it's so much more than that. Because we want God's face shining down on us, right? And so his light is kind of like that sun. And when we do things right, as a tree would, that sun is going to shine down on our leaves, right? And so when you hear that TZ sound at the beginning of the word tzaddik, that is that zaddy letter. And then the next letter is a dalet. Again, we talked about it in several episodes, but it's a doorway. Okay, so it's a righteous doorway, the word righteous is. And then we've talked about the kuf before, which is that letter that kind of means there's a hidden spark inside. And it's also the letter that begins the word holiness. And so here we see this idea of a righteous tree, so to speak, that is a doorway to the hidden spark of God, so to speak, hidden in holiness, like what God told Moses when he was, standing there, like, take off your shoes because this is holy ground, right? He was turning Moses actually into the concept. Moses would become a Zaddik. In other words, one that was a doorway for many to become righteous, as they would receive the law later at Sinai, through so much, and all the Torah, So it's a beautiful thing, this word righteous. You'll find it throughout. And I hope you're like me, that wow, the more I've thought about that, the more I like the word. And I feel completely different about being right these days than I used to. So again, this is all in the show notes. I have the 10 words and these things listed out in the PDF that you can get there for future reference, as well as previous episodes. And once again, I appreciate so much you taking this ride with me today on the Mind Train.